Hi there. In this video, we're going to talk about the basic structure of a website and how a jQuery mobile app is very much like a traditional website, but it's distinct in a very important way. So right here, I've got a website that I just whipped up for the purposes of this example. This is the home page, clearly, and it has three child pages about various animals, which are rather cool. So you click on a Goody page, and it takes you to a page about agoutis. You click on Tibetan Fox page, it takes you to a page about Tibetan fox. I just read this description. I'd like to point out that it says a rabbit hamster-like mammal. Sorry, that's just funny to me. So this here is the code for the home page. See, it says home page. There's the paragraph. Here's another header that says please pick a critter. And then it has this unordered list. You know, it's an unordered list because it's a list with bullets. And each item is a link to those individual pages. So if I were to click a Goody page, it would activate this link. And the reference to that link is agouti-page.html. So what it's saying is that when you click on that link, it needs to go to the location agouti-page.html, and that's actually a completely separate file. See, there's pangolin page, Tibetan fox page. They're all here in this website folder that I've made. And so you would click on agouti page, and it would take you to agouti-page.html, a completely separate file. See, we got heading, heading, paragraph, paragraph, image, image, link back home, link back home. The link to back home is just index.html because that's always what the home page of a website is. And the same thing works with the pangolin page and the Tibetan fox page. So the important thing to understand is that this website that I've created lives totally inside this folder called example. Each one of the pages, all 4 pages, each one of these pages that you could possibly visit are their own individual, distinct HTML document. Homepage has index.html, agouti page has agouti-page.html, pangolin page has pangolin-page.html, and Tibetan fox page has tibetan-fox-page.html. Very straightforward, one page, one document. There's nothing wrong with this system. This system makes perfect sense. But for the purposes of jQuery mobile, we're going to do things slightly differently. The way that we handle pages is going to change. Instead of having one page, one document, we're going to have one document, many pages. And the way that we link to pages is going to be very similar but slightly different. And the way that we delineate, that is, the way that we draw lines in between pages, is going to be slightly different as well. But if you just keep in mind that you need to think about your website or your mobile app as a collection of discrete individual pages, then you should be able to keep all this stuff straight inside of your head. Just a word about the head section of an HTML site before we go on to the next section. So as we've talked about before, and you've probably noticed in most things, that your HTML document has a couple of different sections. There's the head, and then there's the body. A mistake that lots of people make, and I can understand how people can make this mistake, but it's if you find yourself doing this, you've got to break yourself of the habit because it's very, very bad. Is that they see head and they think that, oh, that's just the top part of the web page. That's not how it works. The head is for defining information about a web page. It's not stuff that people necessarily see, but it is important to setting how the web page is going to function and how it's going to look. The body of a web page is the things that people see. You see how a Goody page is the very first thing that you see. and it's the very first thing inside of the body section. Very, very, very important distinction. What you see here on the web page is content. It's what you want people to see. All of this goes in the body. The content of a web page only goes in the body section of your code. Extremely important to remember. I see a lot of people going into the head section and then typing, like a Goody page or whatever, because they get confused between head and header. Newer HTML builds have the new tag called header. It looks like that. It works basically like a div. Don't worry about that. So the head is only for defining information about the web page itself. So in this case, we've got the title of the web page, and then we've got this, a link to the style sheet. I added just an easy, simple style sheet to this website because I wanted the images to be smaller and I didn't want to bother resizing them. But style is information about a web page, is it not? Yes, it is. So if I also had, it's making a reference to another file that is style.css. If I wanted to link to some JavaScript files, I would do script and then the source of whatever they were. There's various other things that you can put into the head, but what you write in the head section is not going to show up in the body of the page. It doesn't belong there because the body of the website content is just for the body. This is only for defining information about a web page and how it's going to function. So that's a very important distinction. Just think of it as head, no content, body, all the content. You can think of the internet as a very superficial person. They only see your body, they don't see your head. So keeping that in mind, we can go on to the next section dealing with how to initialize your jQuery mobile app. So now that we understand how a traditional website is constructed and we know a bit more about the head section, then we can dive right into making jQuery mobile app. For the sort of underpinnings about what jQuery mobile is, please read the actual lessons. These videos are a bit more about the mechanics of how to actually do it. But simply stated, jQuery mobile is a JavaScript framework. For our purposes, that just basically means that a team of people around the world have written thousands of lines of code that do a whole bunch of complicated stuff, but has been constructed in such a way that it's very easy for us to call up these complicated blocks of code in a very simple way. And that's why we use jQuery mobile, is because it's so much work has been done on the back end of it that we only need to worry about a few issues with the front end of it. So here you can see that we have just the basics of an HTML page. Here it is open. As you can see, there's nothing. There we go. You can see that it's live. So we can make it look like the homepage of our original website that we were just working with. Put it in there. See, it looks just like that, just like it always was. But we want to make this into a jQuery mobile app. And the way that we do that is we have to initialize the app. We do that by adding some information into the head, which is basically we're going to link all the styles and huge blocks of code that the jQuery mobile team has created for us. So you do that by going to jQueryMobile.com and then to download. You can download all the code and stuff to your computer so that it can run without an internet connection, and you'll be doing that later in the build process. But for right now, we're just going to link directly to the code files. So right here, it says copy and paste snippet for jQuery CDN hosted files. That just means that these are big old files hosted on their server that we're going to be able to link to in our document so that our apps will work. There we go. Just indent that nicely. And you can see what these files actually look like if you go to one of them. See, that's a web address. If you remember before, we linked to a style sheet that was here on my computer. So like this is the Agouti page in the old website that I was making. And you can see that I linked to a style sheet that was here on my computer. But you can also link to style sheets that are hosted somewhere else on the internet. And that's basically what these 3 lines of codes are. See, we're linking to a style sheet that the jQuery team has created, and then we're linking to the jQuery base code, and then the jQuery mobile extension. So if I were to go to one of these web addresses, then you would see this, completely unintelligible by a human being. You don't need to worry about any of this stuff. Don't try and read it, or do. I won't stop you. So basically that's what we're doing. In the same way that originally we had linked to a simple style sheet that I'd created right here, and then linked to my page, we're just linking to a huge base of code that another team has created for us. So there we've got it linked in. We got it linked up there. Now what does this web page look like now? It's slightly different. The fonts are different. The colors are a bit different. The size is different. The background is a subtly darker shade of white, but we're not anywhere close to this being fully fledged. So we've got the very basic important part of a jQuery mobile app, and that is to link the API. That's the application programming interface. Up here in the head, the same way as we had with the style sheet in the last one, we just link these 3 lines of code, which are 3 huge code files. And the place that we found them was at jQueryMobile.com/download. We scrolled down to right here, and we just copy and pasted the code directly in there. So in the next section of this video, we're going to discuss the different sections of a jQuery mobile page and talk about how you actually create those. So the next important thing to understand about jQuery mobile is that it's based on you creating a whole bunch of invisible boxes and linking them together. And if that sounds weird, just bear with us here and it'll make better sense. So on your own time, you should go to jQueryMobile.com/demos and go to the latest stable version and scroll down to pages and just read this whole thing. I'm not going to take you through this right now because this is a screencast and this is a big written document, and that would just be silly. You can do it on your own time. But read what they have to say. Also read what's in the written lesson on the website, and you will get a much better understanding of this if you use all 3 of these resources together. So basically what it talks about is the structure of a jQuery mobile page. Remember that jQuery mobile is essentially just taking a website that you've made and adding this jQuery magic to it to present it in a new and exciting way. So before, with that old website that we were looking at, we had, this is the home page, this is the home page document. Here's the Agouti page, here's the Agouti page document. Each page was an individual document, but with jQuery mobile, we have all of our pages, all the code for all of our pages are going to live on the same document. And we just use the special tools that jQuery mobile gives us to make these pages separate. So that's what this section of the video is going to be explaining. So the first thing that you need to do is that we would agree that this here represents a page, right? That's our page. It starts with this H1 that says home page, and it ends with the end of this unordered list. So we're going to wrap the entire thing in a div. Divs are an HTML element that's basically an invisible box. They have no characteristics of their own that you can see. For instance, like H1 is an HTML element. you can see it right there. That's clearly an H1. P is an element. You can clearly see it right here. IMG, image, that's an element. Links are an element. List items are are elements. All these are easily like recognizable. You say, oh yeah, that's a list item. That's a home page. But what does a div look like? Well, I just add that. I save it. I refresh, and nothing changes. That's because divs are an invisible box. The whole idea behind a div is that you are able to put certain sections of your content into a box, and then you can define special rules about that box. So in the case of this, we're going to say that this div here constitutes a page. We do that by adding an attribute to this initial div. And by the way, just get used to me saying div 1,010 times in this video, and for the rest of your work on jQuery mobile, because that's just how it is. So if you remember what an attribute is, it's a bit of information, or it's a thing that you put in the opening tag of an HTML element that defines information about that element. This is the A tag. It makes links. This is the href attribute. It's defining the location of this link, or sorry, it's defining the destination of the link. This whole thing here together is an attribute. It's defining information about the A tag, and that information happens to be where the destination of a link is. Attributes are super important for jQuery mobile because they're how we'll get basically everything done. So in the case of this div, we type data-role, and that's going to, this is a little trigger for for jQuery mobile to say, oh, data role, that means that something important is about to be told to me. So this div is an invisible box, and it contains this content. So what role should this div play? What role should this invisible box take on? And that role happens to be page. Because we've agreed that this is a complete page right here. So we put it into a div, which is an invisible box, and then we assigned that div the role of page. A brief aside, this is the correct syntax for attributes. It always starts with the name of the attribute, an equal sign. It won't let me, that's weird. Equal sign, and then in double quotes, you have the value of that attribute. You see that it follows the same pattern right here. This is the name of the attribute. There's the equal sign. Here's the double quotes, and then there's the value. Anyway, so we're partway there. We've decided that this is going to be a page. And then we have this sort of interface, this convention of mobile interface that we want to have in our app, that we want, instead of this H1 here making it look like a boring old document, we want to make this more kind of appy. So we're going to put this in its own invisible box. And of course that won't do anything. We want this to be what we call the header. I know this is called the head. This is called a header. Just try and keep those two things straight. So we're also going to give this thing a role using an attribute. So data-role equals and header. And there's a third and final bit of stuff that we, one more invisible box that we need to put our content into. That we've got, this whole thing is a page. We're saying that this first heading is going to be the header, and you'll see what that actually looks like when we refresh the page. And then this is the meat. This is the content of this particular page. And so it only makes sense that we put it also in its own invisible box. For simplicity, I'll put that right there. And what role should we give it? Since this is the content, we'll just call it data-role equals content. There. So if I did this correct, then I can just hit refresh right here, and it'll look exactly how I expected it to, and I won't have to go back and edit this part of the video. And I really hope that I don't have to do that. So let's see, did it work? Yes, it did. All right, excellent. I didn't want to have to re-edit anything. So here, data role equals header, and then we have the home page on the inside, and this is what it became. The content right here, you probably don't remember what it used to look like, but all the content was kind of smushed up against the edge of the page right there. But yes, it all worked. So this right here, starting here on line 11, ending here on line 29, is a complete page. It might not seem so profound right now because we only have one page, but now that we've understand the basic structure of how an HTML or of how a jQuery mobile page should look, then we can start adding more. So I'm going to go ahead and add the agouti page. And for simplicity, I'm going to do this. I'm going to write a comment right here. Comments are just notes that you write yourself inside the code so that you kind of keep it straight. These are like write comments. They make your life so much simpler. Like this is a very short thing, and so you can kind of just get it all at a glance, but the finished app will be like 3,000 lines long. And so having notes like this are just a lifesaver. Anyway, so the next page is agouti, so I'm just going to copy that code straight out of here. We don't need any of this other stuff. All we care about is the content of the page. I'll paste it in right there. And so logic would dictate, like here's our original home page. Logic would dictate that if I took this code and pasted it into the old one, then, hold on for purposes of this. So there's our original HTML over here. So if I took the agouti page as content and just pasted it right in and then refresh, then of course this happens. You know, why wouldn't it? I just added a bunch more code onto this original web page. So yeah, what else would you expect to happen? So conventional wisdom would say that if I did the exact same thing here, if I just took the agouti page's content and pasted it right underneath all of this, then it should show right up. So let's save this, let's refresh this and see what happens. And you'll see that we don't see it. So this code is here. You know, we can even look at the source code for this page, and there you can see that it's right here. So where is it? Well, the answer lies in the fact that we put that this here is the page. This is the home page. Everything included inside the page div is going to be what people see. I could put 100,000 million characters underneath this, but because it's not inside the page div, then no one will be able to see it. So that's where the power of jQuery mobile comes in, is that you can have all of these different pages on the same document, but you won't be able to see them, but it arranges them by discrete pages. So we just need to get this into the correct format. So what's the major one? Div data role equals page. Finish that off right there. So we make the data role equals page, close it off right there. I'll add another comment just because I'll be adding more of these things here. So we've got the page div. What do we have up here? We have the header. So we'll make a header div data role equals header. And this is the content. I'll get rid of this. We don't need the link back to the home page. It's not correct anymore. Let me see. Example. So that image won't show because it's not in the same directory. Example. So I just made a new jQuery mobile page in the exact same structure as this one, where we have everything encompassed inside the page div. We have a header and we have content. Well, we did the exact same thing here. We have the page div. Here's the header. Here's the content. There we go. The page is ended. So what does this look like now? Well, of course, it doesn't look any different. Why would it? These are two separate pages, just as this page is a separate page from this page. It's just that over here in our traditional website, they're different documents, whereas over here, they're different pages, but they're on the same document. So we need to actually find a way to link them together because these links won't work correctly anymore. So the way that we do that is by creating a page ID that in the old website we linked to the other pages by stating the name of the document that they were in. In this new system, we're going to link to other pages by stating the ID of the page that they're in. So that just means that we need to give each page an ID. And so that's just another attribute here in the opening tag of whatever div that we're talking about. So here in the opening page div, we'll say ID equals homepage. And then over here in the agouti page, we'll say ID equals, and then double quotes, agouti page. So, like I said before, we were linking directly to other HTML documents. But when you want to link to another location inside a jQuery mobile document, you do # and the ID of the page that you're linking to. So let's see if that worked. So I don't have a way to get back to the old one, so I'm just going to add a link here on the agouti page. And how do we link to other pages within a jQuery mobile document? It goes # and then the ID of the page we're trying to get to, which in this case is home page. And there we go. So this right here, we now have the working principle behind a jQuery mobile app. And that is basically that it's a website that looks like this. It works in exactly the same way, or you use the same language and everything that you would to make a normal website, but now we just add in these little data roles. This is the traditional website. It's a collection of individual HTML documents. When you want a new page, you make a new document. With the jQuery mobile site, when you want a new page, you just create a new div with a data role equals page. and then you start populating it with content. So yes, basically that is the working principle behind these jQuery mobile apps. Other videos and other supporting materials will go more into sort of the individual widgets that you can use to create better user interfaces, but at its most basic, this is how it's done. So hopefully this has been informative. As always, definitely look at the written materials here on the website because they are very good. Everything that we've talked about in this long video is in chapters 0, 1, and 2 of the online lessons, and they're more articulate because I actually had time to write them out. So definitely check these out. Please do.